Just days before the summer break, Lewis Hamilton pulled off a move that sent shockwaves through Maranello. He quietly submitted top-secret documents directly to Ferrari's highest executives, exposing what he believes must be fixed if the team ever wants to stand on top of Formula One again. What was hidden in those pages? And why could Hamilton's bold message change everything for Ferrari's future? Stay with me until the very end, because the revelations are more explosive than anyone realizes. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking. So imagine this moment, because it is not just another quiet pause in the Formula One calendar, it is an earthquake reverberating across the sport, a shockwave that stretches from the garages to the corridors of power, from the tifosi in the grandstands to the inner sanctum of Maranello. At the exact point where most drivers unplug, where teams retreat into silence, where the paddock exhales during the long summer pause, Lewis Hamilton has chosen to act with a precision strike. Rather than resting or hiding away, he has shaken the entire institution of Ferrari by presenting something no one expected, a sequence of highly confidential, devastatingly detailed, and uncompromisingly candid documents delivered directly to the men and women who sit at the very summit of the Scuderia. These weren't polite memos drafted to appease egos, nor were they vague suggestions sprinkled with compliments. They were raw, blunt, carefully ordered reports that broke down, piece by piece, every fault line he has detected inside the organization since setting foot in red. What sets this move apart from anything else we've seen in recent years is the breadth of his critique. It was not confined to machinery, not limited to feedback about traction, balance, downforce, or tire degradation. It was not a driver simply complaining about how the car feels in fast corners or how strategies fall apart under pressure. No, Hamilton's scrutiny penetrated the very anatomy of Ferrari, exposing the structural issues that have been festering beneath the surface for far too long. He pointed at the culture of indecision, at the layers of bureaucracy that slow reaction times, at the fear of accountability that paralyses strategists when seconds matter most. He highlighted the gaps in communication, the missed signals, the moments where confusion on the pit wall snowballs into humiliation on global television. He examined not only the failures but the patterns that lead to them, showing Ferrari in clinical detail that their wounds are self-inflicted, preventable, and entirely solvable, if only they dare to break their own traditions. The tone of these documents was striking. Hamilton went out of his way to make clear that he was not dictating from a throne, not imposing commands with arrogance. He described them as proposals, as ideas born of long observation, shaped by the scars of battles fought through seasons of dominance and despair. Yet no amount of humility in framing could hide the sharpness underneath. Every sentence carried the authority of a driver who has lived inside the most dominant machine modern Formula One has ever seen. Every paragraph carried the warning of history. Ferrari had once promised championships to Fernando Alonso, and they slipped away. Ferrari had once courted Sebastian Vettel, and glory still eluded them. Hamilton spelled out, with cold finality, that he will not let his time in red end with the same bitter aftertaste. He will not allow his final years in the sport to dissolve into another failed project. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking. That determination radiates like a signal flare across the paddock, and it has rattled everyone who heard about it. Inside Maranello, the reaction has been electric. Senior figures, many of whom have dedicated decades to Ferrari, felt stung, their pride pierced by Hamilton's analysis. Some whispered that the Englishman was overstepping, daring to meddle in traditions older than his career. Yet among others, especially younger engineers, analysts, and mechanics, Hamilton's intervention landed like oxygen in a suffocating room. They saw not an attack but an opportunity. For years they have watched their ideas buried under layers of hesitation, their innovations blunted by caution, their energy drained by the inertia of an institution more obsessed with rituals than results. For them, Hamilton's words are the opening shot of a revolution, a chance to reset Ferrari before it becomes permanently irrelevant in the era of Red Bull supremacy. What is unfolding is not a calm consensus but an internal civil war, one side clinging to legacy, the other desperate for change. And the brilliance of Hamilton's strategy lies in the timing. By delivering these files at the doorstep of the summer shutdown, he has ensured that Ferrari's leaders cannot escape his words. The break, usually a period of quiet reflection or simple rest, has transformed into a chamber of unrest. Executives who plan to enjoy holidays will instead find themselves replaying Hamilton's critiques in their minds. Strategy chiefs will sit awake at night wondering if he is right, wondering how much of their work is actually broken. The weight of Hamilton's assessment will follow them through dinners, through family gatherings, through every stolen moment of peace. Subscribe only if you want to stay updated with the latest breaking. He has forced the team into a state of unavoidable introspection, ensuring that his demands echo through every conversation before the season resumes. Beyond Ferrari's gates, the spectacle is intoxicating. Fans feel like they are watching the opening of a gladiatorial conflict. Journalists scramble to piece together what might have been written, some suggesting Hamilton criticized pit wall decisions with surgical precision, others speculating he demanded changes at the very top of Ferrari's leadership structure. Rival teams are glued to the drama, Red Bull watching with amusement, Mercedes studying their former star with fascination, Aston Martin observing with curiosity about whether Ferrari will fracture or evolve. The effect is global. Hamilton's reports have become more than private papers. They are now a myth in themselves, a narrative thread that captures the imagination of millions. What Hamilton has accomplished is profound. He has redrawn the map of his presence inside Ferrari. He has announced that he is not there to add glamour, not there to smile for cameras, not there to act as a symbolic champion in red. He has arrived to dismantle what is broken and rebuild it in his image. He has told Ferrari that he refuses to go quietly into history as another failed savior, and in doing so he has placed the Scuderia at a crossroads it cannot avoid. They must decide whether to follow him into reinvention or retreat into their past, knowing that the choice will determine not just their future but his legacy as well. And so Formula One waits, breathless, wondering what happens when racing resumes. Will Ferrari embrace the painful transformation Hamilton demands, or will the team resist, clinging to rituals while the modern era races ahead without them? One truth cannot be denied. Hamilton has turned Ferrari's summer into a battlefield, and the war he has declared is not against rivals on the grid, but against the very inertia that has strangled the Scuderia for nearly 20 years. This is no longer only about a championship fight. It is about survival, identity, pride, and the will of a man unwilling to be broken by history. What emerged through those Italian leaks has been described not as the typical driver-to-team feedback that circulates after a race weekend, but as something of a manifesto drafted by Lewis Hamilton himself. These notes, far from being a casual commentary about handling quirks or small adjustments, were a carefully constructed, deeply analytical breakdown that exposed weaknesses at every level of Ferrari's operation. What makes them remarkable is that they seem less like a driver giving advice on a setup and more like a world champion demanding a transformation of the entire culture and machinery of one of Formula One's most storied institutions. In those documents, Hamilton did not limit himself to remarks about car balance, brake wear, or tire degradation. Instead, he used his experience, sharpened over years of dominance at Mercedes, to highlight a contrast so painful that Ferrari, if it listens, may need to reinvent itself from the ground up. He began by detailing the deficiencies of the machine itself, and the descriptions were scathing. He wrote about braking systems that in his view betray inconsistency, providing a response that sometimes grabs too abruptly and sometimes fades without warning, undermining the confidence of a driver who relies on instinct at 300 kilometers per hour. He described how the steering rack feels at times too resistant, as if he is wrestling against the car rather than guiding it, and at other times devoid of feel, like a dull channel that transmits no sense of grip or surface beneath. He made clear that the engine braking configuration is out of harmony with his natural rhythm, dragging on corner entry in a way that forces him to adapt to the car rather than letting the car adapt to him, an inversion of the relationship he demands. He underscored that weight distribution is another crucial area of fragility. The balance shifts unpredictably, so that in changing weather or under different fuel loads the machine transitions suddenly from manageable to volatile, forcing him to drive with caution rather than aggression. The Spa event was held up as the most glaring demonstration. There, Hamilton insisted on testing a brake system he himself had proposed, searching for a solution. In heavy rain, it seemed like a miracle. He cut through the spray with confidence, showing glimpses of the magic that made him a 7-time champion. But as the conditions improved and the circuit dried, the very same change turned into a trap. In qualifying, the car snapped violently in a fast section, sending him into a spin that shocked even those who know his limits. Engineers combed through data, confused, but Hamilton saw it as confirmation of a larger truth, that Ferrari still approaches solutions like games of chance rather than disciplined experiments. For him, the incident symbolized a deeper fragility. When a setup can feel divine in one lap and catastrophic the next, the platform itself lacks the stability required for a driver to trust it. At Mercedes, Hamilton argued, calculated risks were backed by exhaustive data analysis. At Ferrari, he feels those gambles come dangerously close to roulette. Yet the sharpest blows in those papers were not about brakes, steering, or weight distribution. They were about Ferrari as an organism. Hamilton accused the team of being too slow, too bureaucratic, too hesitant when it matters most. He described strategy discussions that drag on while rivals make bold calls in seconds, decision-making processes slowed by multiple layers of authority, and engineers unable to act with confidence because responsibility is diluted across too many people. He compared this paralysis with what he knew at Mercedes, a system where lines of authority were crystal clear, individuals were empowered to act, and efficiency was prized above politics. There, information flowed rapidly, choices were made instantly, and hesitation was punished. At Ferrari, he suggested, hesitation is the norm, and by the time consensus is built, the moment has already passed. He depicted a team trapped in its own meetings while the race itself is slipping away on the track. What made these memos so explosive is that Hamilton did not stop at criticizing the racing operation. He challenged the very structure of Ferrari as a corporate entity. He pointed out that Ferrari is not simply a racing team but a global brand, an Italian monument, a company traded on markets and scrutinized by shareholders, board members, and executives far from the pit wall. In his view, this weight of identity is strangling the team's agility. He urged them to strip away interference from Turin and Milan, to protect the Formula One unit from corporate micromanagement, to allow racers to make racing decisions without waiting for distant approval. He argued that Fred Vasseur must be given complete independence, that he must not be shackled by invisible chains of oversight from executives who do not stand in the garage. He proposed a new framework, one closer to Mercedes' model of efficiency. Streamlined communication, authority delegated clearly, information passed directly, and unity maintained so that action could be taken in the very instant it is required. But this is where the conflict reaches its highest stakes. Ferrari has never been quick to embrace revolutions. The team's self-image is bound to tradition, hierarchy, and a sense of being more than a competitor. It is an institution, a piece of Italy itself, an empire where pride often weighs as heavily as trophies. To do what Hamilton asks would be to strip away layers of identity built over decades, to transform Ferrari from a monument of heritage into a flexible machine of modernity. Such a move, while potentially powerful, also carries the risk of alienating the very culture that sustains the Scuderia. For Ferrari, it is a choice between bending to the vision of a champion who knows how to win or clinging to a way of life that has too often left them on the edge of triumph but never at its center. Around the paddock, the whispers are constant. Some see Hamilton's clash with Ferrari as inevitable, another chapter in the long saga of champions who entered Maranello with dreams of glory and found themselves battling politics instead of rivals. Others fear that if Ferrari does yield and implement Hamilton's reforms, the Scuderia could rise from the shadows into a force as unstoppable as it was in the Schumacher years, turning Formula One upside down. Rival engineers and strategists admit privately that they are paying close attention, because a Ferrari reborn under Hamilton's demands could tilt the balance of power in the sport for years. The tension now is more than a matter of performance. It is a collision of philosophies, a duel between a driver shaped by a culture of relentless efficiency and a team weighed down by the inertia of its own legacy. Every lap he drives, every pit wall hesitation, every boardroom whisper feeds into this greater story. What will matter most is whether Ferrari chooses to shed its skin and embrace change, or whether it allows pride, hierarchy, and tradition to keep it chained to mediocrity. The answer to that question could redefine not only Hamilton's legacy but Ferrari's destiny, and with it, the competitive landscape of Formula One for the next decade. The universe of high-level racing is experiencing a transformation that feels both inevitable and unpredictable, where every announcement and every rumor carries with it waves of consequence that extend far beyond a single team, a single driver, or even a single championship. Among the stories sparking the loudest discussions in the paddock and beyond, the saga surrounding Mick Schumacher has become one of the most captivating. His career, forever shadowed by the monumental legacy of his father, continues to twist and turn, pulling him into unexpected narratives that force fans, insiders, and decision-makers to re-evaluate what his future may hold. The most recent whispers link him not with a traditional Formula One outfit, but with Cadillac, a manufacturer that has aggressively positioned itself within endurance racing and whose broader ambitions may extend into the very heart of Formula One itself. For Schumacher, this potential alignment with Cadillac offers something far more valuable than just a new contract. It symbolizes the possibility of rebuilding his trajectory in a way that could reconnect him to the top echelon of motorsport, while simultaneously tying his name to a project that mixes heritage, commercial appeal, and ambition. The pathway being suggested places him with the Cadillac-supported HOTA endurance program, an environment that would test his adaptability while simultaneously providing a stable platform for growth. More importantly, it places him within the orbit of a manufacturer that is carefully laying the groundwork for something greater. If Cadillac does move forward with a Formula One project, the presence of a Schumacher already within their ranks would offer instant credibility, media magnetism, and a driver whose hunger to prove himself remains unquenched. The intrigue around this idea intensified dramatically after Jenson Button, the 2009 world champion and one of the sport's most beloved figures, declared that this season would be his last as a professional competitor. Button's decision reverberated through the motorsport community like a shockwave. His departure is more than the retirement of a veteran. It is the removal of a stabilizing force, a driver whose adaptability, charisma, and sheer presence shaped not only the racing world but also the way fans connected to it. When someone of Button's stature steps aside, it does more than leave a gap. It creates a scramble, a vacuum of opportunity that others are desperate to fill. For Mick Schumacher, the timing could not be more fortuitous. After enduring criticism and setbacks during his time in Formula One, he now finds himself positioned as a candidate to seize an opportunity precisely at the moment when a manufacturer like Cadillac is searching for both talent and marketability. Supporters argue that this is his chance to step out of the shadows and rebuild, that endurance racing could give him the chance to prove his resilience, his determination, and his capacity to adapt. Detractors, however, maintain that Cadillac may be risking too much by tying itself to a name that, while iconic, also carries heavy baggage and immense expectations. Yet regardless of which side dominates the debate, what cannot be denied is that Schumacher's potential link to Cadillac has become one of the most discussed and engaging storylines of the moment. It encapsulates the way modern motorsport operates, where branding, timing, and ambition weigh as heavily as outright performance on the track. While the driver market pulses with uncertainty and speculation, another storm is raging that touches every corner of the sport: the future of the Formula One calendar. The schedule, already criticized for its exhausting length and the strain it imposes on teams, continues to attract more and more contenders eager to secure a place. The competition is no longer just about racing heritage. It is about politics, economics, and the ability to offer the sport a stage that delivers prestige, profit, and global exposure. Portugal has emerged as a passionate player in this contest, with its Prime Minister directly championing the return of Portimao by 2027. That circuit, known for its undulating corners and ability to produce unpredictable racing, left a mark during its brief tenure on the calendar, and now political pressure is mounting to bring it back permanently. Turkey, too, is fighting to revive Istanbul Park, a circuit remembered fondly by fans for its dramatic layouts and the unforgettable races it once hosted. Yet the fiercest battles are unfolding far from Europe. South Africa's campaign to bring Formula One back to the African continent has gathered momentum, appealing not only to tradition but also to the symbolism of expanding the championship to every continent. Rwanda has startled many by positioning itself as a dark horse, building a bid that frames Formula One as a tool for visibility, development, and global recognition. Then there is Thailand, whose capital, Bangkok, has become the centerpiece of one of the most aggressively funded campaigns the sport has seen in years. With the government pouring immense resources into its bid, Thailand has rapidly established itself as one of the most powerful candidates, making it increasingly difficult for the decision-makers to ignore. The appeal of such a market, with its economic muscle and strategic positioning, pushes Thailand into the spotlight, and whispers in the paddock already suggest it may soon become a confirmed destination. But the fundamental problem remains: the schedule is already too crowded. The teams are vocal about the toll of endless travel, the engineers and mechanics are stretched thin, and even fans are beginning to show signs of fatigue as seasons balloon into relentless marathons. To insert new races, others will inevitably be sacrificed, and this brutal reality has turned the calendar into a battlefield of influence, money, and politics. Heritage circuits that have served the sport faithfully for decades now find themselves at risk, not because they fail to produce breathtaking racing, but because they cannot match the financial firepower of emerging markets. The dilemma fuels impassioned arguments among fans and insiders alike, with traditionalists pleading for the preservation of legacy venues, while pragmatists point to the financial sustainability and global reach that expansion brings. Madrid illustrates the contradictions at the core of these decisions. Despite widespread skepticism about its proposed track and doubts about whether it can deliver genuine racing excitement, the Spanish capital seems all but guaranteed a slot in future seasons. The reasons have little to do with sport and everything to do with political willpower and substantial economic incentives. Critics describe this as a dangerous trend, proof that Formula One is prioritizing financial deals over the authenticity of the racing product. Defenders, however, counter that such agreements are what allow the sport to continue growing, to invest in new markets, and to remain financially robust. The debate intensifies with every new rumor, every leaked negotiation, and every hint of circuits being dropped to make space for wealthier bidders. These two ongoing sagas, the uncertain future of Mick Schumacher and the relentless fight over the calendar, reveal the same fundamental truth. Formula One is in a state of perpetual reinvention, where survival and success depend on far more than raw speed. Careers can be reshaped overnight by timing, brand value, and political maneuvering, just as the calendar can be redrawn by the promises of governments and the size of sponsorship deals. Button's retirement adds yet another twist, acting as a trigger for change across multiple levels of the sport, while the scramble for calendar slots forces everyone to confront uncomfortable questions about what Formula One represents in this modern age. Each rumor spreads like wildfire, each negotiation fuels anticipation, and each decision carries the power to alter not just the present, but the very identity of the sport itself. In Formula One, where politics, innovation, ambition, and survival are entangled in an endless battle for relevance, prestige, and financial security, the smallest decision can spiral into consequences that alter the course of a team's future. The most surprising development of this campaign has not come from one of the traditional giants, but from Haas, a team long perceived as modest, restrained, and often resigned to the role of surviving rather than dictating. Against all predictions, Haas has thrust itself into the spotlight with the introduction of an unexpected upgrade package midway through the season, a bold maneuver that caught rivals, journalists, and fans completely off guard. At first glance, it appeared irrational for a team without championship aspirations to invest so heavily in new performance components. Yet when one digs beneath the surface, the logic becomes clear. This is a carefully calculated risk, not a reckless leap, and it has the potential to redefine their position in the most unpredictable sector of the grid. The structure of Haas has always differed from most of its competitors. Unlike other midfield squads that pour enormous sums into manufacturing every intricate piece, Haas has strategically chosen to rely on its deep technical partnership with Ferrari. By sourcing numerous fundamental components directly from Maranello, they avoid the crushing financial burden of full-scale development, allowing them to operate with leaner overheads and redirect their limited manpower toward selective, high-impact projects. This arrangement, often criticized as evidence of dependency, is also their unique strength. It gives Haas freedom that others lack, the ability to channel energy into targeted improvements instead of spreading themselves thin across the entire car. This is why their decision to gamble on a mid-season package, while shocking to outsiders, fits perfectly into their survival blueprint. At present, Haas holds 35 points in the standings, a number that might sound trivial but in the brutal world of Formula One's midfield is pure gold. Between 7th and 9th, the difference in prize money runs into millions. That gap could mean a factory upgrade, the ability to retain key engineers, the recruitment of specialists from rival teams, or even simply keeping dozens of mechanics employed for another year. For Haas, this is not about ambition for glory but about life or death in a financial sense. The consequences of success or failure stretch far beyond points on a table. They touch the livelihoods of the men and women who dedicate their lives to the team. The upgrade package is, therefore, not just about speed. It is about survival, reputation, and proving to sponsors that Haas remains worthy of investment. History shows how quickly fortunes can be reversed. Alpine, not so long ago dismissed as a lost cause, languished in anonymity until a single extraordinary weekend in Sao Paulo delivered a double podium and altered their entire season's narrative overnight. That miraculous turnaround reignited belief within their factory and repositioned them in the eyes of the world. Haas craves its own moment of revelation, its own instant in which years of struggle are vindicated by one breakthrough performance. A jump from 9th to 7th may sound insignificant to those unfamiliar with the sport's economics, but within the confines of the Haas garage, it represents hope, continuity, and credibility. It is the fine line between being overlooked and being acknowledged as fighters who refuse to fade quietly into obscurity. While Haas battles for relevance with calculated technical risk, another storm brews at the very top of the grid, one not defined by financial survival but by questions of identity, philosophy, and leadership. Red Bull Racing, the benchmark of dominance in recent years, now finds itself at a crossroads, caught in a moment of transformation triggered by the temporary absence of Christian Horner. Into this void has stepped Laurent Mekies, a figure known for his restless energy, insatiable curiosity, and ability to rally those around him. Mackey's leadership style is not cut from the same cloth as Horner's authoritarian precision, and this has already begun to ripple through the organization. Verstappen himself, rarely one to lavish praise on team management, publicly acknowledged Mackey's drive and enthusiasm, a signal that the reigning world champion senses a new dynamic within his environment. The deeper question is whether this shift is a temporary adjustment or the beginning of a new era in Red Bull's culture. Central to this transformation is the matter of the driver lineup. For nearly 2 decades, Red Bull has built its identity on merciless efficiency when it comes to talent management. Their system was designed as a conveyor belt. Young drivers were given a chance, and if they did not deliver instant brilliance, they were discarded with little hesitation. This approach created champions but also left a trail of broken careers behind it. Stability was virtually non-existent under Horner, who thrived on relentless pressure and ruthless reshuffling. Now, whispers within the paddock suggest that Mackey's may be preparing to challenge that very DNA, embracing the unthinkable, continuity. The suggestion that both current drivers could remain in their seats for another season would have been dismissed outright under the old philosophy, but under Mackey's, it suddenly feels possible. The political intrigue within Red Bull is fierce. Helmut Marko, forever the guardian of the young driver program, remains unwavering in his belief that Yuki Tsunoda deserves a longer future within the team, convinced that his natural pace and fiery personality can evolve into something greater with the right support. At the same time, Liam Lawson continues to strengthen his argument with disciplined, consistent displays in every chance he receives, building momentum that cannot be ignored much longer. And waiting in the shadows are the prodigies Arvid Lindblad and Isaac Hadjar, names already whispered in conversations about the next generation of Red Bull stars, each desperate to be fast-tracked into the spotlight.